Alright guys, let me show you what I got going on here. Fitting these flares on the G-body. I don't remember where I got these. I'll post a little comment once I find out what it is. But they're generally around like $400, something like that. But anyway, they're composite, they're plastic, which is good because you can kind of like mold them to the body. If you need to, you can kind of, heat stuff up and move it, which is nice because these are not for this car. So you do have to do quite a bit of modifications to this thing. These flares also, have a huge gap, lip here, because they're supposed to be fastened that way. So I cut that way down, and then I just kind of like smooth everything out, as you can tell, to mimic like a nice arc. One thing I will note that I didn't like about these is the arch here is real arbitrary. I had to kind of sand everything. It's sort of wavy. So just kind of go through and get that nice, because if not, once you put it up and you put the little seal that comes with these, it'll mimic the shape and it'll be wavy. But I'll just show you how this is fitting. I have an aftermarket bumper here, so if I didn't have this bumper, the flare would not reach the bottom and it would look probably pretty gross. So this definitely helps because I can just chop it down a little bit and it looks more appropriate. It looks more fitting. So made some marks here about kind of where the center is. I also did put a wheel in here before. That way I can like manipulate the flare and make sure it's in the right spot. And I did that just visually. And then I mimicked the same over there. I didn't have to measure over there once I do one side. But it fits pretty good here. It's pretty spot on. Wraps around nice. And then the front also, like I said, for my case, I was able to like move this way and that way because I do have this lip to go off of. But let's put this in line here. It was kind of flat here, didn't really fit that well. Same with up front. So what I did is just heat it up a little bit. And long as you really got to heat it pretty good, but right on the edge, because if you heat it too much, I was using a glove and I had a wrinkle in the glove, and when I pushed, the wrinkle, was in here. I did that on the other side. But you can just sand it out. But anyway, just, be conscious of that when you're heating it up. Mold it, and I try not to mold it this way. I try to stay with the line, which works really well. So anyway, put this in place. This is what I did. Draw our line. This is where the fender's gonna sit. We don't need this anymore. So here's our line. I usually like to stay about an inch and a half away, and from the cut line, or from the fender line, excuse me. That way we have some material to bend up to mimic the angle of the flare. Because if you have it like this, there's nothing to fix it to, so I just kind of want to flare it up, and then we can fix the fender flare to the panel. Way easier. And you're not trying to force it down or force this up. The arc here, some people really get hacky underneath their flares because who cares, you just put it on, you don't see anything. But I like to have like a nice arc, and I like to finish it off with kind of the angle of, or the thickness of the fender that you're left with. So we're gonna do that. I'm gonna cut here, smooth everything out, and then I'll show you guys how to fold this up lightly, because we're now cutting all the rigidity out of this fender. And you'll see that after I chop this off, this is really flexible. And with that, when you do bend it, if you're not careful, you'll warp this whole section. It'll be real wavy. But if you take your time, maybe we can flex it up. There's only a couple spots that need to be fixed. One in the middle, maybe one here and here. And then you can kind of fasten the bottom this way. There's two little tabs here. We'll make some brackets. And the front, if you are real careful, you can get in here and get a little rivet, because nothing is really touching in here. So let's go ahead and cut this out, and then I'll show you the next step. All right, guys, now that everything's all cut, I just want to show you where we cut is right on top of the factory kind of flare. These fenders have a little flare, obviously you've seen it. This one ends, tape isn't really sticking well, but it ends about here. So, and this one I marked. This is flared already, so this is going to give us an advantage to tap into to hold the flare. This a little bit, maybe I'll grab one here, but I really think that I'm only going to kind of fold this little section up, maybe, depending, because this is really loose after cutting that out. So we have to kind of be careful of what we do, because you can really make a mess over here. So let's just see. I marked everything. Let's just see where everything's at here. You can kind of feel where the fender meets and the fender doesn't meet underneath. This side's mint right here, all the way, probably just a section here. So I'm gonna grab this. I'm gonna grab this, will flare out a little bit, and then this. I'm only gonna do 3 points. This stuff, keep in mind, is real light. We don't need to, fix this crazy, you know what I mean? We will later on, I'll show you how we do that, but I made my own tool. I don't really have specific tools for these, even if there is one, but I just took some big ass pliers or some crescent wrench here, and I made a little pad underneath here and then taped over the pad. So we'll see if that works. That's all I got. Using pliers with the grippy here, you're gonna end up clamping and potentially creasing, the paint, which this might do the same, but whatever. I think this is a little more forgiving, but we'll find out. The length of this is longer than you need, so make sure not to kind of put this up and bend it, because we're not bending up here, we're only bending underneath this line. So if you're not thinking quick and you're like, oh, okay, and you jam this thing all the way up and start bending it, you're gonna have a mess, because your fender's not gonna cover any of that. So keep in mind, you want to come kind of way down here, because we're just doing a little bit. Like what you do here halfway affects everything up here. So anyway, let's start here. So I'm gonna take off this, that. I just don't want to lose my lines. Any warping we're going to do, especially the black, you're going to notice everything. But again, our flare comes way up here. So let's just give it a little heat, and then we'll just manipulate a little bit and see if it may be okay. Sometimes I use like a wooden dowel. That works too. But with that, it creases it at the bottom first and then up. This we can kind of grab here instead of here. Heating it up definitely does a little less forgiving, a little more forgiving actually for the paint. It's probably pretty good. Now it doesn't need to touch, but as long as it's the same angle, I think we're pretty good. So I'm kind of grabbing the back of this and making sure this stays straight, because if not, I'm going to pull this and I'll push that in. So just kind of support the back where you're bending everything up. Okay, it's not too bad. Won't damage the paint, but we'll see if in here. Okay, it's not too bad. This is good too. So now let's go ahead and fix this in place where we want. I'm going to clamp it on I'm gonna get things generally pretty square where we want it. And then we're gonna drill some holes in the back of the fender. And once we do that, they'll poke through and make a mark on our flare. And then once there's a mark there, we'll clean everything up and we'll make a little stud, a little stud to come off all 4 of them. So let's go ahead and do that quick. And I gotta find the tape. There it is. All right, moving on to the back. This side, or the rear, is a little more difficult than the front. We're gonna have to make 2 cuts in order to get this out. You're really gonna have to take your time with this. There's 1 cut here, and then we're gonna have to cut this, which we're gonna do first. Cut this edge to cut the pinch welds off, so then we can cut this and take everything off. One thing you wanna worry about is your depth of your cut. You wanna make sure when you're making this cut, you don't go too deep. Because if you do, you're gonna cut the backside, and we need the backside to kind of like flip up to fill this gap here that we're gonna create, which you'll see in a minute. But these are old ass cars. Everyone that's had them has done burnouts with them, which I've noticed. I did the other side already, which was a mess. And the reason it was a mess, when I was cutting into this, there's a ton of rubber in here. So it's just dripping out, splashing everywhere with the cutoff wheel. It really makes a mess. So wear a face shield or some shit, because it just makes a mess everywhere. But let's go ahead and cut this out, and I'll show you what it exposes. All right, there's our cut. Looks pretty good. Just take your time. This thing wants to jump if you cut in a certain direction, but just let the tool cut instead of trying to force or trying to make your own line. Just take it easy. Anyway, we cut the bottom off, which we still have to do a little more of that because I think that's still attached. Let's see if I can pull it out here. As you can tell, that this car was undercoated or something. I think it's like oil and grease. It's pretty gross. I think it was undercoated, I mean, back in the 80s, obviously, or whatever coating that they used, but this stuff is gross. It's like nasty. So I guess the next step, if this is on your car, which it probably is, I think, let's try to get all this crap off the best we can. But it's pretty gross. I don't know, I'm not gonna touch it. We're gonna go ahead and mount the flare on here and kind of see where it sits. All we're gonna do is make a little mounting tab, you know, so we can put a stud on it. And also I want to drill some holes in here because essentially this is how it's going to be fixed to the car, is 2 here and then 1 here, and that'll be enough for it. You can only reach in so far from the trunk to kind of get back in there. So I made a little mark of kind of where I'm going to do things. I wish it was right in the middle, but it can't be. So let's go ahead and bend this out, flex it a little bit, and see how good of a job we can do. You just gotta take your time again, you know. You don't need much. I don't really need these to meet together. There's a little bit of a gap in between the flare and the panel here, but it doesn't matter. That bolt's gonna go through. We just need it snug because these fenders in the back, all right, keep in mind that this arch is way different from what we have here. So what we're doing is actually spreading the flare a little bit. And when you spread the flare, what happens is the front side wants to flatten out. You know, there's no gap here anymore. Because if they're, you know, I'll give you an example, like this is closed or closer, and then as you straighten it out, as you stretch it out, it wants to go flat. So once we screw the sides in, both sides, it'll be nice and flat against the panel, and we'll be able to put our screw in there, and it'll just hold this snug. You know, we won't need anything here. You know, I can come up pretty high with the screws over here, and pretty high with the screws over here, and this thing ain't going anywhere. All right, let's put our hole in here. And then after that, we'll mount this back up. I'll clamp it in place, everything where it should be. Put our holes in the side for our screws, and then I'll locate where this hole is in accordance to this. And then we'll go over the bench and we'll put our studs on here. I'll show you what's going on. So to get the location for this hole that we drilled now, it could be a little tricky. I want to show you guys how I did it. I already marked it, but I had everything fixed in place. You know, our screws were all set. Took this one down, it's kind of hanging down, and now we can move it out of the way and see our hole. Measure over from the center line. This one is about 6 inches, a little more than 6 inches, and then I marked it right there, and then I went down and just to kind of generally see the center of that hole. It's about 1.25 inches. Inch and 3/4. Put everything back in place. Marked where we're at here. So we get our location this way. And then our up and down, I just measured from, you know, our edge down and marked 1 inch and 3/4. Now we'll do the same thing on the other side because we're not drilling a hole through this. So we need to mark where the location is on the other side. Let's go over to the bench and I'll show you guys how I mount the studs to the fender flares. And we'll do all of them at once also. So let's go over and see what we can do. All right, so we cut this out, we know that. I'm gonna clean this up a little bit more to try to, like, you know, make these match the car itself. They may be thinner in some places or not. And what I mean by that, I'll show you a little example. I think this is the other side, but anyway, you can tell like we trimmed it nice. So everything kind of like will be matching and whatever. Look kind of like factory. First things first, let's transfer our little hole over to the other side. 1 inch and 3/4 around here. All right. So we got to kind of prep this before we go ahead and before we go any further. First, I'm going to mark this hole, or mark this area. I guess we'll call it, right? So when you do any of them, mark this out with a cross super far. I'll show you why we want it so far. This one's going to come way down here. We need to kind of rough up this area. So just kind of stay with me and I'll show you what's going on here. So I went pretty far, and what we want is to still catch our location, so we just kind of line everything up. It should put us right there. You know, you kind of eyeball it. All right, so this is how we're going to fix this. These are some fatty washers that I found, which are pretty nice. And these are the bolts I'm going to use. So I'm going to kind of go like this, and I'm going to put them like that. But before that, there's some prep work to do with these. This head is way too big, so let's go ahead and shave this down. And then these, we want to be able to adhere this a little better. So what I'm going to do with these is drill 4 holes in them, and then your panel bond, we'll call it, will, you know, ooze kind of through that and hold everything, which they will look like this. So let's go ahead and take care of this bolt real quick, and I'll be right back. So here we go. I don't know if you guys can see it. Kind of took the head off. So now when we go place this guy in here, we're super flat against it, and there's no bumps or nothing. And that's it. So let's go ahead and fix this guy to here, and I'll show you what's up with that. This is what we're going to be using. It's called FiberTech by Evercoat. My brother turned me on to this stuff. It's super strong. There's little fibers in it. I watched a couple of YouTube videos before I used it. This is definitely what to use for this application. You can use epoxy or whatever else, but I didn't want to take any chances, so I think this is the best way to do it. It's a little hard to work with. You know, depending on how much activator you put in, it's really quick to cure. If there's a bunch, like the front ones have like 4 or 5, you just do one at a time and mix one at a time instead of mixing one big batch, because the stuff will harden up and you won't be able to get to the second one. But another thing I want to talk to you guys about was keep in mind that this edge is really close to the body. Whatever washers you're using, you don't want to use a too big of one. If it comes close to the edge, you're going to have an issue, and there'll definitely be a gap there. This is our gasket that comes with it, so that won't be able to fix to that either, unless you cut out that section, and then it's going to lift and get weird. So anyway, I cut one in half, and that way you can kind of screw around and leave a little bit, 3/4 maybe to the top, and everything will sit nice like that. With the FiberTech stuff, that's definitely gonna raise everything, because it's gonna be covering everything. And I wouldn't get too nervous about that. And there's 2 reasons why. One, once the little gasket's on there, you have quite a bit of room, that's kind of forgiving. Plus also our hole we drilled is not right against this. It's kind of back a little bit. So this can actually be huge, and it doesn't matter because our fender, or the part we bent up, doesn't really sit against it. But anyway, I kind of keep that in mind, because what does sit against it is this edge. It doesn't really make sense now, but once you go put it on the car, you'll see what room you have and what room you don't. Along the edges of the front fenders, they're really close and they're touching. So therefore our screws will have to be super short. For this one, it's a little farther away. Our screw can be a little longer to reach it. But anyway, enough of that. Let's go ahead and put this here with our little screw, don't forget that. And that's it. I'm gonna be using medium size to kind of mix everything up. Here's our hardener, and then a little guy to kind of apply things. Another thing that's good is to just grab another little guy. This is a little easier because it doesn't flex, which sometimes that's what we want. You'll see that in a minute. But before any of that, I definitely did scuff this up, because these are galvanized and they have like a kind of coating on them. So I'm not taking any chances here. Just scuff everything up, clean the hell out of everything. I don't want these to come apart when I'm driving and look like a clown. So clean everything up nice. These 2, see, look at that. And then this 2, I'm gonna just give a little once over. So you don't really need much. Like I said, we're doing these one at a time. Stuff is really nasty. You may think that's a lot, but you're gonna find out that it's not too bad. Take this guy and kind of like just mash it in there for a minute. Laying this on kind of thick. Remember, we always can sand this later, but it kind of doesn't move too well. And what I mean by that is like it drags itself because there's a bunch of fibers in there. And then just kind of match up where we got our lines, which I kind of covered that one. It's right here. This is the tough part, where you kind of got to be tedious with it. Just take your time and do things like kind of gentle. It's sort of tough. Kind of dragging things out pretty big, or pretty wide, because I want kind of this whole area to, you know, kind of be strong. I don't know if it's going to be or what, but it's trial and error here. Just be conscious of the bolt there, because if you get any on the threads, then you're going to have a hell of a time trying to screw that thing in. All right, guys, back over to the car. There's a couple different ways to tackle this part of it. You can weld it, you can stitch weld it, you can tack weld it. Some people even just clamp and use some filler or whatever, or some people just leave it, which, whatever. I've seen expandifoam in there and they just chop this whole thing, which is probably not recommended. But the way that I found to be, I don't know, the easiest on us, I guess, without painting the whole car, and still will do the trick, I'm going to bend this up, cut them, and I'm going to bend this up and then around, and then shave it, and cut the top off of it because it's real long, and I'm going to throw a rivet in there. I'm going to do every inch or so, there's going to be a rivet. And yes, I know rivets will move if they need be, or if they're pushed too far, they will move. But after the rivets are there, I'm going to put some of that panel bond. So I'll mud that over them, and then I'll make a strong bond, and then I will paint everything, and it won't go anywhere. The car's not being used for the strip. It's not being used at the racetrack. You know what I mean? This is a weekend car, so this is more than enough for what I'm doing. I have welded ones before. I have my other car here that one side I full welded, the other side I tacked, you know, each, you know, 1 inch apart. I threw 2 tacks in there. The tacks worked a little better. Full weld was not awesome. It created a lot of heat. The paint was kind of messy, and now the car needs to be painted. You know, you have to learn somehow. The side that I did stitch weld or tack, like I said, that worked better, but still the heat, you know, created some warpage, also created that, you know, it still ruined the paint, which if I was painting the car 110%, I'm gonna roll these up, I'm gonna full weld this thing, I'm gonna, you know, body fill it and get everything right. But for this application, I think this is more than sufficient. A couple rivets, body filler, whatever stuff, and I think we'll be good to go. So let's get started on that. We'll make our cuts, and then I'll show you the process. It's pretty tedious. You really have to take your time, but as long as you take your time, everything will come out mint. So just have a little patience. So as you're cutting these, try to start in the middle. This side's a little better than that side because you want to kind of fan it out, because you want to try to follow that radius, you know, rather than just making them all straight. You know, this side is decent, but this side's a little better. You can tell they kind of move. And the reason for that is because when you bend them up, you want them to bend up this way and not that way, and then have to tweak them. So let's go ahead and bend these up and start in the middle, which is the best place to start because it's going to kind of stretch everything out. So I'm just using a piece of wood, and I'm going to use my studs to kind of steady this, which you'll see more as I get here, because once you get over here, the jack is going to want to walk. So I kind of like stick my 2x4 in there, and we can turn it, you know, wherever we want to be with it. So for now, we'll be good though. Let's see what's up. I'm gonna kind of start in the middle. Bend this up a little bit. Which they don't take too much force to bend. They're pretty easy, but they're a little short. If they were a little wider, you know, it'd be a little easier to get these in. And I guess that's kind of my fault, but let's just bend them up first. Just get them out of the way. You can tell they're really easy to bend. Stretch over there. So this is probably the most tedious part of this whole thing, but you have to kind of just take your time and make it worth it. You know, it'll be rushy. Let me get that thing up against there flat. I don't know if you can see it. I'm just going to bend this up. And we're going to cut this short. Well, 3 down. I already forgot to take my tape off, so, which I'm sure you guys probably noticed, but alright guys, next thing we're going to do is tape this up, and we're going to go ahead and run some seam sealer in there. This is a brand, it's called Duramix by SEM, or SEM, whatever it is, there's a number. Let's tape it up and see what's up. The reason I'm taping this is because I kind of want I want to kind of keep it contained to make it look nice. I mean, you can just do whatever and spread it around. But, I don't know, kind of anal about things. It's probably not necessary, but I'm going to do it anyway. I'm going to start with this section. Get in here nice. And then later on I may end up grinding this, like I said earlier, to make it kind of flow a little bit better, but we'll see. I'm just going to kind of go in between the cracks and kind of everywhere that you want. All right, that's that. Looks pretty good to me. Okay, let's take this tape off. Do it this way. You want to take the tape off when it's wet. If it's not, I think it'll just dry and then your tape will be stuck on there. Okay, there we go. It's still drying. I'm pretty happy with it. And so it'll be like jet black when it's dry, but we got underneath little hole here, which is to access our bolt or nut on the back of that. I'm not really happy with that piece of tape either, like kind of overlapped, but you're not going to see any of this at all. So, but regardless, you want it to look, you want it to be a neat job. All right, last step. I fitted the other passenger side, or excuse me, the driver's side, and I noticed that some of the holes kind of didn't line up, which is expected because we were kind of eyeballing with the marks and stuff, you know what I mean? But it wasn't too far off. So I drilled these holes to match the size of, our studs now we were using. So I'm just gonna, this one fits really good, except for this one is a little like, it's too tensioned. So I'm just gonna open the hole a little bit, and I'm gonna open all of them. That way I can kind of like manipulate it where I want. It's pretty damn close. But again, this one fits good. This one's good. This one is just like, it goes in, but it's like a little tight. Well, I guess this was all right. I just want to see that kind of line up a little bit better. So I may just open this so I can like relax this a little bit. You can see there's no bolts in there, and it's pretty tensioned. As far as the front goes, we're perfect up here, good here. I did drill a little hole here, tiny guy. After these are painted, I'm gonna run a little rivet in there, real small, it'll stay in there. And I may end up cutting back on this a little bit later on, which is easy enough to do while the thing is on, because depending on what I do with my tires, again, I want them to have as much clearance as I want. So let's go ahead and open that up. You really have to get out. Okay. There we go. Now there's enough room. I can kind of move this thing around, and it needs to be up here a little bit. There's a decent gap in between. I was kind of nervous about that with the all that sealer that we put on there to create the studs, but I think we're good. And also, we need room in there because we have to run seal in there also. So, all right, let's go get these things painted. And then we'll put everything back on final. So I'll post another video probably later on about like my wheel setup and everything else. Everything mounted up, and maybe I'll get it on the ground. Start adjusting, doing alignment and stuff, and go from there, but we'll see what happens. All right, guys, there you go. Finished up. We're gonna move on to paint. I'm gonna take these off and send them out to my buddy who paint them, get them back. Then we'll start doing our fitment. I'll post another video on that, depending on what wheels we go with, or what tire size we're gonna do. But anyway, this little project is quite involved. So as long as you take your time and do things pretty meticulous to each specific side on its own, I think you can get the results you're looking for. I haven't found too much info on how to do this. There's a little bit of information on the import guys, import scene. You start diving down that, you'll notice that like a lot of people do this, but they hack the hell out of them. They'll bash them, they'll cut things or not supposed to be cut, and then just cover it up. I try to do things a little neater. There's one other guy that did this on his Malibu, and I just want to do things a little different, let's say. one isn't better than the next, but you know, I figured I'm gonna make a complete video, show you guys what's going on. I didn't see him post anything about his rears, which again, as you can tell, like it's the most difficult part. But anyway, I wanted to walk everyone through it. Appreciate you guys sticking around. It's kind of a long video. I'd like to know what you guys think. Leave a little comment below. If you need a hand, have any questions, I'll answer right away. So I wanted to show you my interior real quick. Pretty excited about it. I just finished it up today. It was tan, and I did a ton of work to try to get this thing to black, and I think we're pretty good. It's a little different. I put these Recaro seats in there. Color I'm still getting used to. You know what I mean? It's not for everyone. These seats are from Thailand. They're Recaro LX seats. I use these a lot. I like these a lot. Comfortable. Along that, I put some new seat belts in, and they were really like across my face because they sit so far back. So I found these little tabs. They're plastic from a 92 Honda Prelude, I think it is, from Japan, the right-hand drive. I picked up 2 of them. They're cheap. Used a little heat on here, twisted them until I got them in the right position, and now they're good to go. So that was fun. Put our shifter in there the other day. That was a pain. Had to make this big plate. It was not easy. Put the gauges in today, kind of finished them up. Blinkers still don't flash, so I'll get that going. It's probably my fault, something stupid. But that's it. We still have some stuff to do there. I'm putting a little gauge there. That's all. It was all tan. It was pretty crazy, man. But everything looks pretty good. The headliner, you know. I don't know. A lot of work. I'm excited. But anyway, stick around, guys. I will talk to you sooner than later. See ya.